We are very excited to have, and this is a good part because I'm going to turn it over to a legend in the industry, Mr. Bob Saxon, VP Marine Max, Yacht Charter, Yacht Management, and take it away, Bob.
Are we mic'd? I guess we are mic'd up, and you know, legend just means old, okay? That's all there is to that kind of thing. Been around long enough. The situation that we have here today is this panel discussion. We thought it'd be a nice format like Actors Studio. You see an arts and entertainment, and get these brilliant minds over here. One phenomena I noticed about charter brokers seminars is that the men's rooms are always available for us, okay? And there's always a line outside the ladies' room and all that, so we appreciate that. One of my pleasures with Florida Yacht Brokers Association on the board of directors is that I'm the liaison to the Charter Professionals Committee. When Crom Littlejohn dropped off the board, he passed the gavel over to me, and it has been a work of a love. It's a thing that's been so interesting and so great to be able to work with these charter managers and charter brokers in the industry, and three of whom we have assembled here today. It's a pleasure. That's so animated, these committee meetings. When you think of committee meetings as being dry and blah, and oh no, I got to go to another committee meeting, you ought to sit in on one of these things. I'll tell you what, they're really, really lively and active. The panel we have assembled here today, there are copious biographical notes in your packets, and I'm only going to say, if you need to refer to those, be my guest. But in fact, I don't think we do, because we've established this elite A-team up here that's comprised of three of the giants of the industry. I've had many, many, many years of personal experience, having worked alongside a couple of them anyway. And so I'm just going to simply say that we have here with us today, from left to right, Nicole Caulfield of Robert J. Curry & Associates, who is serves as both charter manager and charter broker. She's been able to be one of those very few people that can do both of those jobs and do them effectively, and she's very well respected in the industry. And we have next Terry Hines of International Yacht Collection. I jokingly said earlier, as she was being mic'd up, trying to give Terry Hines a microphone or a lavalier is like telling Einstein he needs a calculator. So, and then to my far left is Ann Landry, who I've had the pleasure to work with on the charter brokerage level at Bob Saxon Associates a few years back. And Ann and I were remarking about how we looked around and how everybody's been getting older, as if we haven't been getting older though, right, and all that. So, is there anybody that needs to understand, because we have a full-blooded charter manager here, I'm a charter broker, retail, charter vacation sales. We have a full-blooded charter manager here, we're probably the best technician in the industry. And we have a hybrid here, charter manager and retail charter broker, filling both roles. Now, having had sales brokers teams that worked for me for 30 years, I know that even my salesmen would come in and say, I don't really understand the difference between what Barbara Stork does and what Terry Hines does. So does anybody need an explanation of between wholesale and retail and charter management and charter brokers? Because it's important that you understand that as we go through our progression of ideas too. If so, raise your hand and I'll give you the quick analogy to real estate, and that's what you can draw the analogy to. But if not, I want to talk about the purpose of our panel here today. And we're going to be telling some case histories. We're also going to be talking about a few of the hot things that are going on in the industry, the charter industry today, because it's a dynamic marketplace. Things are changing all the time. And we want to be able to not only give you case studies and case histories, but we want to be able to present them to you in a fashion that we get some best practices that come out of it. In other words, we'll give these case histories. Some of you will be able to relate to it because it refers to you. But at the same time, what we want to be able to do is say what went wrong, what could have gone better, how could the charter manager have worked better with the retail charter broker, how could either one of those parties work better with the charter client, and of course it's the charter client that at the end of the day we're trying to keep happy because they support us financially. So, format. What we're going to do is going to go through a couple of those case histories at first. And I don't want to be so structured that I'm going to ask you to wait till the very end of the conversation. And then, with 5 minutes to go, and Bert's got me on a very short leash here today, which is good, because I tend to go in and tell stories, so you got to watch out, okay? But what we'll do is, if you have a point to make, or if you have a question to ask, whether it be midstream of a scenario that we've created here or discussed, raise your hand. And I don't know, do we need microphones, Cindy? Are we passing the mic and all that kind of stuff today? Well, what we want to do is we want to make it spontaneous and as lively and animated as possible. So have the microphones at the ready. And the only reason I would ask you to raise your hand if you have a question of Ann, Terry, or Nicole is so that we can get the mic to you and have you speak your piece so that I don't have to repeat the question, and that tends to drag it on. So there are some questions at any time, as I said. That's what we want. We want a lot of back and forth because this interchange or this exchange of information is what makes these panel discussions. And the fact that we have assembled here over 5 years of experience between the three of these people here today, that we have them here, and why not take advantage of their knowledge? And the mark of a profession is sharing information. It differs from an industry in that way, and that's why there are industries and there are professions. And when you share information and help your colleagues for the betterment of all, then the industry moves along in that way, and it creates an energy. And if you're doing more business, everybody else will be doing more business as well, I've found out from the years. We have a charter here, a charter scenario that was created here on many occasions, and it's called, familiarly, the two brokers, same clients scenario, okay? I see a lot of people grimacing and rolling their eyes and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to relate a couple of these to you, if I can find my notes. I left all my notes sitting on the printer back at the office, and I'm working from my iPad and also some hand scribblings I just did a few minutes ago. So here we go. And this first scenario was an interesting one, and it involves one of our charter managers. This is where broker one, now follow this along because there's broker one, broker two, and charter manager, okay? So broker one has a client with an owner canceled booking, okay? Owner canceled booking, which is very common in our industry, as we all know, unfortunately, because most of our owners don't take chartering as serious and as commercially minded as we'd like them to be. It's because they build their yachts not necessarily for the commercial market, but they build them for their own personal private use, and they allow them to charter out on a very exclusive basis for a few months a year. So broker one has a client with an owner canceled booking. Of course, the charter manager has to be the bearer of bad news in those cases. Broker one was to blame, as it were. The client or someone affiliated with him contacted another broker, okay? Broker one had taken a 10% reduced commission to reduce the contracted gross in the VAT, and we all know about VAT, and had finalized a fully executed agreement. There was a fully executed agreement in place. There was a side letter regarding the reduced commissions, as is a good practice in our industry to have that documented. So broker two surfaced after the contract was fully executed, but before the deposit was paid. I'm not sure how important that is. I'm going to ask them about whether the deposit needs to be paid or not, or whether a contract, executed contract, in fact, establishes the business relationship. And broker two, broker number two, contacts the charter manager and is obviously the same client. And what the charter manager oftentimes will do is, you sure it's not the same client? And they go, broker generally say, no, no, my client would never be disloyal to me, and all that kind of stuff, right? We know that's wrong. And so broker two contacts the charter manager, is obviously the same client, and the charter manager informs broker two that the deal was done, had a fully executed agreement. She says, okay, all right? And that broker two then went back to the client over the weekend and badgered the client, probably, badgered him, into doing business with her for even a greater reduced commission than the original contract. Broker one calls the charter manager and tells the charter manager about all above that the client agreed to book through her if he reduced her commission. So the client goes back to broker number one and says, well, broker number two reduced her commission. Why don't you reduce your commission, and we can possibly do a deal. Needless to say, the behavior of broker two was probably bordering on unethical, but I'll ask our panel about that. And so it leaves the charter manager in this unenviable position to have to go back to the owner of the boat. And the charter managers have the worst jobs in the business, believe me. And I tell you, because they're dealing with captain talk, and they're dealing with owner talk. And that's a very difficult position to be in at the time. Second most difficult, charter brokers. They're dealing with the clients. So anyway, so what do you think about that scenario that I've just described to you? And any one of the panelists can pitch in at any one time they want to.
Well, I lived it, so it wasn't very good. It was totally unethical. And the thing about chartering is if you don't have the deposit, if you don't have the balance, what are you going to do about it? Typically, nobody sues in this business.
Yeah.
So everything's based on trust, so you just have to proceed. But there was already a signed contract. There was already good faith on everybody's part. And for that broker to have known that and tried to break the contract was unconscionable. So I told broker number one that she should report the other broker to MEBA and have the broker thrown off Yachtfolio and the e-contract. Fortunately, it worked out. Fortunately, broker one kept the deal by reducing her commission, which was a shame, but we have done all this work together, so that's what happened. And you know, it was just a very unfortunate situation, and frankly, I think it happens more now than ever, because there's more brokers in the business, and it's such a waste of time.
Yeah. Any comments from the attendees here on this? There's a question, possibly a question or a comment. Why don't you stand, and your microphone's on its way to you right now. And we're going to talk about ethics for just a second.
Hi, Terry. So was there any action taken against broker number 2?
I'm going to follow up on it. I don't know whether she did anything or not, but I want to do something about it.
Okay. I agree with you. I think it's completely unethical.
I will tell you one thing I would have done. I told you that had broker 2 got the client to say he would take the boat through her, I was going to make the boat unavailable.
Power of the charter manager.
I would not proceed with her.
I like the way you think.
How would the owner feel?
I could have booked it. Wouldn't have been a problem.
Leanne asked, how would the owner have felt, is what she asked. And Terry responded.
I think he would have agreed with me.
Yeah.
I think he would have agreed with me because I had to explain the embarrassing situation as it was. And what I did was I told him, don't worry, your net's the same. But it shouldn't have happened. It makes us all look bad.
Right here, I'm sorry. Quickly, if you say it loud enough, we don't need a microphone.
He doesn't need a microphone. Are you kidding? I agree. As having been a charter manager for years and years, I think it's a dual thing here. I think that now because of the internet and, you know, with regard to other industries that, you know, you just stay online long enough, you hopefully the client thinks that they're going to get a better, cheaper deal.
Yeah.
So we have that problem. They're pitting us against one another, the retail brokers. And as a charter manager, you know, we have to try to remind our industry people that we're a group. If we start, you know, clawing at each other, we're going to degrade the whole industry. And broker number 1 and broker number 2, as a charter manager, I've had to do that. I've had to go to 2 brokers and go, look, I would bet my kids' souls on the fact that your dates are the same, the people are the same, their ages are the same, they want to go to the same place, you have the same client. Mm-hmm. Now, let's, you know, we never even got as far as a contract or something like that, but you try to stop it there. But if it goes as far as it did, then the brokers need to have, you know, some loyalty to one another and an industry. It's an integrity thing and it's an honesty thing.
Yeah, well, in this case,
we have to make it happen.
In this case, broker number 2 realized it was the same client, knew it was the same client, and aggressively went after the client. And are there any attorneys in the room? Who's that? Danielle, tortious interference, contract interference, does this border on contract interference if, in fact, we have a fully executed agreement and the second broker steps in and tries to interfere with that contract?
There's elements to tortious interference in a business relationship, yes. Whether it's, you know, at the end of the day, it's all whether it's provable and it's about each and individual fact of the case. But whenever one person tries to interfere in another person's business affairs, that's why Florida has that, that cause of action to pursue.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. And Leanne, last comment on this as we move along, but go ahead, shout it out if you want.
She's saying the state of Florida.
Danielle was stating the state of Florida has, you know, the statute of tortious interference, but what if I'm not mistaken, this involved a Mediterranean broker and a U.S. broker? What if that's the situation? Is the only remedy then going through MEBA and the ethics committee and hopefully getting them thrown off of Yachtfolio and the e-contract?
Nicole, you're nodding yes.
Yes, because it's not, unless you're going to bring a tortious interference and they're both in Florida. That's your only other remedy.
There were 2 med brokers.
Two med brokers, interesting, okay. Well, I don't know whether it's an international principle. It seems like it'd be something to be an international. I have the definition of tortious interferences, and Daniel was right on the mark about it. Also known, it's known as intentional interference from contractual relations in the common law of torts, and that's English, I think, occurs when a person intentionally damages the plaintiff's contractual or other business relationships. So those of you that are retail aggressive and all that, be aware that when there's a contract in place, just as in yacht sales, you do, I think, border on, and there's somebody raising their hand back here. Danielle, again, sorry.
Actually, I just want to make one point to her comment. So the tortious interference between the two brokers, and I'm assuming that that's where the action would lie, has nothing to do, I mean, the subject matter, the business, is the chartering. But you're not necessarily tied to the terms of the charter contract in order to go to arbitration or to pursue whatever the charter contract has. You're now talking about a separate lawsuit between two individuals in interfering with business. So unfortunately, in that case, they were both in the Mediterranean, and good luck trying to hail them over here, but just keep that in mind.
Well, the only difference is versus sales, we almost never involve attorneys. Sorry, because the margins aren't that great. But let's say this was a 6-week charter, it'd be a big deal, and then you'd be talking some serious money.
Yeah, hundreds of thousands in charter commissions potential and all that. We have a hand over here. I'm going to allow just a couple more minutes on this one, but go ahead.
Given your scenario, isn't that the reason why the charter manager exists?
Well, we seem to think so. What do you mean?
To vet out when there's potentially competing contracts or competing offers on the same vessel at the same time.
She came in after the contract was signed.
Okay, so then.
And the offer or the negotiation is
everything was done.
individual.
Okay, so wouldn't the response then to offer number 2 or to broker number 2 be boat's not available, it's already under contract?
I told her that. I said, hey, there's a done deal.
She wanted this client. And Ann made a good point. Ann, the point you made about the owner?
It was, Terry said it was also signed by the owner.
So fully executed. Existing contract. Okay.
I'd like to make a point, I mean, basically because of all the merger and acquisition activity in the early aughts, I've probably worked with half the people in this room at one time or another. And, and that's the thing is, somebody with a lot more public exposure than I said recently, when they take the low road, I take the high road.
Sounds like yes.
And I think that's what we need to keep in mind is that we're friendly competitors. Shannon said that to me when I came to BSA. Friendly competitors.
Oh, those halcyon days of BSA.
Just something to remember.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I'm going to move along to another commonly used phrase in our industry. It's called the charter from hell. Okay? If you've had a charter from hell, raise your hand, okay? Guys, I know you have. All right, so what we have is charter broker books 2 separate charters on a yacht, okay? 2 contracts in place, 2 separate events in place, all right? The first charter is completed, and the crew are disgusted by the behavior of the guests. Are we familiar with this? And they are mortified that there is another charter booked on the same boat by the same people. Okay, now we already have 2 contracts, fully executed agreements in place. So the question is, at this point in time, and I have all the details, but I don't want to read them to you. And it involves kids in their bowel habits, and chocolate candy, and throwing food on the floor, and on and on and on and on. There's several pages of this. So what we have is a situation where what are the owner's rights at this point in time? When you have such a bad charter that the crew, even the crew is in all likelihood, was this your charter? Whose charter was this? Oh, it was Pat's from Fraser's. Yeah, no, I'm not going to say. You did.
So much for anonymous.
Now, there are no names, so we're talking generically.
No names except for Pat.
Pat wrote this to me and said, here's a scene that could happen. It didn't really happen. Okay. The kids were left unsupervised. You know, that crazy situation where the crew are often left to be babysitters, which is taboo. Or to bathe the children, I've heard on occasion, which is absolutely taboo and all that. So during the charter, it was mentioned that their second charter was over the holidays, and there would be 4 catamarans in a flotilla with them. The crew feared that they would be using the main boat as a mothership, as a base, and that they would become an entertainment center throughout the contract, even though the contract states 12 guests on board maximum. And the broker was asked to remind the crew that the crew are not babysitters, and on and on and on. So let's talk about this for a second. What rights are there for an owner to cancel a second charter and not suffer liquidated damages because of the amoeba, liquidated damages based on the date of the cancellation, the severity of the cancellation? So what do we got here, panel?
A mess.
Contractually, I don't feel like the owner can cancel the second contract because he has committed to it. It is a fully executed contract.
Yeah.
The first charter, the captain should have stepped in, documented it, called the charter manager, called the broker, had a meeting with the client and said, this is unacceptable. I have the ability and the right to terminate your current charter now.
Yeah. On this hypothetical,
and take them off the boat.
hypothetical charter, Pat, did that happen? Did that hypothetically happen?
Yes.
No, not diaper. I'm always saying in the conditions that.
It was a mess all around.
Yeah, but as Nicole
But contractually,
referenced.
you don't know who will be on the second charter. So you can't cancel the second charter not knowing maybe the kids won't come.
I think it was a personality conflict between the captain and the charter, so that had a lot to do with it.
Again, that's not covered by the contract, unfortunately.
Could it be force majeure? Unanticipated?
What should have happened is the first charter should have been terminated. And then, then there would have been a loss of their money, and they would have gotten the message, according to the protocol of the contract. They would have learned their lesson.
To behave properly
But
the second time.
once that charter was over,
Yeah.
they lost their opportunity to cure the problem to the best of their ability.
So then can the owner cancel the next charter?
No.
She's saying no. So what happened to the
Contractually,
second
would you
charter?
advise an owner to cancel?
Contractually, I would have advised him to cancel the
The
first
first, would you advise him to cancel the second?
one. I don't think it would have been a problem because I think they would have canceled anyway.
What
That's
conditions?
fine. The
Was this amoeba
the
contract?
charterer can
Doesn't matter.
cancel,
There's
but not my owner
There's
the
liquidated
second
damages
time.
in the AYCA, doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Okay.
but not the second time.
So
'cause
is
they-
this second charter over yet?
No.
Okay, tell us about,
It's resolved, though, with the other parties in the room. It's been resolved because actually the broker spoke with the owner, this owner bank.
We don't know who you are, so don't worry.
And I really wasn't totally involved at the time. I didn't manage to go to broker in my house. I didn't manage to go at the time, but I got handed it after the fact. And
But will
So
the
great.
second charter take place?
yeah.
It was resolved, but my point is, let's forget about that for a moment. My point is, what rights does an owner have to arbitrarily cancel a charter on an executed agreement? Does he have or she have a right to
Force majeure.
cancel on the basis of conditions?
yes, if it's according to the contract terms, absolutely.
During the
Leanne.
charter.
Just out of curiosity, I don't know what clause number it is, but there is a clause about degrading the image of the vessel,
Respect-
damaging the vessel,
disrespect-
disrespecting the
Now
vessel.
we're talking.
But
Like, I-
during the charter,
During the
not
charter.
a future thought of charter.
Yeah, I mean, the first charter would have been done as far as
Right.
I was
Right.
concerned, and that would have scared them either
Yes.
straight or off the boat.
Right.
Yes.
But knowing that the principles were the same, I would still think you could look at that clause at least to talk to them about it.
Okay. So it's been
For the
negotiated. It
next-
sounds like it's been resolved through some good negotiation and all that. That's great.
Addendum restating those clauses right from the legal contract that they signed already, but that third party said, no, my client's not signing it.
Interesting. Very interesting theory and hypothetical. Go ahead.
Is there any financial repercussions if both parties subsequently decide to terminate the contract?
In other words, are commissions paid?
Yeah, commission.
Yeah, the second one or the first one?
So should the owner and the charter guest, the
Mutually
principal,
agree.
mutually agree, this is just a clash of personalities, it's all gone wrong from the start, what are the financial repercussions? And to answer your question, how does the subsequent commissions paid then be managed?
Well, if I'm not answering for the panel, but if in real estate, if two parties walk away at the end of the day, nobody gets paid anything. But it is different in
Commissions
that
are
charter.
earned.
Commissions
Right,
can
commissions
be
already
triggered.
earned.
They can be triggered, yes.
So would you suggest that at that point the commission would be split? Either party would pay 50%?
It can be
It's a
done that way.
negotiable
Are
point.
you talking about the second charter?
Yes.
I would say the commissions would be retained and the guy would get his net income.
Because
I mean, the owner would get his net income and the guy,
But he's saying if they
They
mutually
cancel.
agreed, if
Oh,
they just said
cancel.
this is a
Mutually agreed.
disaster,
Oh, well-
neither one of us
well,
want to
then
do it, you
yeah.
get your money back.
well, then everybody
That
would
becomes a
have.
negotiable point with
Yeah.
the broker, the charter manager,
Yeah.
the owner, and the client.
Yeah.
I think
So
the
if the
broker has to walk away from their commission.
I would agree the
If-
broker has to walk away, but if they choose not to, they could argue it and
probably
fight
have a
it
right to it
legally.
because they've done their job.
Right, it's
So-
already earned.
There's no point
It is
forcing
already
to
earned.
It's earned once you contract and pay and
Yes.
deposit.
It's earned, but you had a complete chaos
Totally
on your
agree.
hands, and it's been canceled to the mutual agreement of the two major parties. So I think the only thing to do
Ethically, morally, they
is
should
to just step
walk away.
back and say like, okay,
Okay. There's, you know, I had a charter with a very famous singer who used to sing, well, used to be a famous singer with the famous hypothetical singing group called the Supremes. And she chartered a boat from us one time, and she had these infant children, and she liked to raise them au naturel, no diapers. And the entire charter was these kids walking around through the boat and all that kind of stuff, doing their thing. And the crew following behind and cleaning up after them and all that kind of stuff. So that charter got canceled midstream out of this. So let's go back. Okay, we've had two brokers, same client. We've had charter from hell, okay? And there's one more I want to talk to you about, and it's another a situation with two brokers, same client. A little bit different scenario. I'll breeze through it quickly. Charter manager negotiates a deal with broker number one, okay? It's accepted by the client who's now ready to go to contract, and the option is put on the Yachtfolio calendar. It's Friday evening, so broker number one and the charter manager agree that contract details can be sent the next day or over the weekend or on Monday morning, whatever. Later in that evening comes an email, and the subject line is asking for the same dates and the same boats. Okay, the charter manager is not practically in a position to be able to respond. Charter manager reads the email the next morning, and broker number two is stating that the option on the yacht is for her client, and she should be made the broker of record. The charter manager, rightfully so, says only the client can decide with whom or who will be the broker. The manager cannot. That's a principle now, a principle of our law, our business. The charter manager cannot change the brokers arbitrarily. So also on Saturday, broker number two left a voice message to broker number one, but did not say why she was calling, then sends an email with the client in copy saying, "Hi, broker number one. I called you today around 11 o'clock. The favor of your return is appreciated." And after this email, the client thinks that the two brokers are working together. Quote from the client was, "I was under the impression that you and the other broker had come to some agreement in handling me as a client." Okay, that's what broker number two would like broker number one, or like everybody, including the clients, to believe. Broker number one calls broker number two, follow me now, and she told her that the client opted to work with broker number two and that the client felt bad. Broker number two told the client she should work things out with broker number one so it would be fair. So broker number two asked broker number one and two, to release the option and offers the broker number one 5%, 1/3 of the deal. Broker number one tells broker number two that it's not her place to say the client didn't want to work with her, and broker number one will only release the option if instructed to do so by the client. And you know what the ultimate outcome of this is going to be, right? Yeah. Yeah, the charter client is going to say, wait, what is going on here? Forget about it. So everybody loses. So let's talk about those things for just a second. The client was horrified by the lack of professionalism that was being exhibited by the two competing brokers. And he says, quote, "I am not taking this trip," or she, I don't know. "I was acting in good faith as well as I did not recollect that she, broker number two, had sent me the boat a number of weeks ago. Thanks for your efforts. Wishing you a great rest of summer. I'm not chartering." Okay. So where do we go wrong here, panel? Where didn't we go wrong here?
From business practices, broker number one that asked for the option has the option for 48 hours, in my opinion. If the second broker wants, whether it's the same client or not, if the second broker wants to challenge that, then the first broker has 48 hours to produce a contract and a deposit. Otherwise, there's no longer an option, and broker number two can get in. They shouldn't have involved the client whatsoever, totally unprofessional. The client doesn't understand the ins and outs of the business and the 48-hour option. So regardless of, who did it, they were both wrong to involve the client in it.
Okay. Comments, questions? I think that's a very good synopsis, or overview and summary of the way it should have been handled, okay? And everybody's nodding in agreement and all that kind of stuff. All right. Here's a charter that happened to me. Broker from New England, hypothetical broker from New England,
Don't say any names.
calls with a booking for a BSA yacht, and we give her the okay to move ahead on the charter. No contract received as of yet. Broker number 2 calls in, and we're convinced it's the same client, same date, same boat, same destination. We go back to broker number 1 as a courtesy and say, we think that your client is calling in from another broker, okay? So we just want you to be aware. Broker number 1 insists there's no way, as I alluded earlier, that my client would ever be disloyal to me, okay? So we think it's happening that way, but broker number 1 says no way in hell that's happening. So broker number 2 comes forward and asks for some concessions on the charter. 1, can my client smoke cigars on the after deck? Can my client bring his foo-foo poodle with him? And can he, if he takes an extra, can he get a free day if blah, blah, blah. So go back to the owner. The owner grants these concessions, all right? So what does the client do? The client goes back to broker number 1 and says, well, I booked with broker number 2 because she got me a discount. I can bring my cigars. I can bring my dog. Broker number 1 comes to me personally and says that I should have gone back to her and said to her, you do realize that we are now running a special. We're offering cigar smoking and free pup poodles and everything else on the boat. And it was really, now what are the obligations of the charter manager in that situation where they know, but the brokers don't seem to know? The client knows. He's working with 2, and he's trying to get a better deal by way of negotiating back and forth between the 2. What can you get me and what can you get me? So how would a good charter manager have handled that, Terry?
Hang the phone up. What I had said is, I don't give somebody's deal to anybody else. I don't care if it's the same client. You work the client, you work the deal. It's your deal, and it belongs to you.
Yeah.
It's individual.
Yeah. There's a principle here, and that is that you as charter brokers have an obligation, that brokers, that key word there, just as yacht brokers have an obligation to get the best deal for your client that you can get them. And the charter manager has an obligation to the owner of the yachts to get the best deal for the owner of the yacht that they can get them. And that's where that thin wall always exists there, and there's that separation and all that kind of stuff. So any other points about this? Because I'm going to throw some shotgun topics out at these folks up here real quick, because our time is running out here. And if there's no questions on that, I'm going to throw some ideas out at you. And this is my shotgun approach to it. Wave runners in the Med.
Wave runners in the Med, yes, that's a big deal. The boats that offer RYA training on board and licensing on board, I go for them first. But if my client has to pick another boat for various reasons, when I present the offer to the owner through his charter manager, I list that the owner will provide RYA training on board or will hire an outside service to perform that service early in the charter. And I also put it in the special conditions on page 2. It's so important because basically you're putting the captain in an awkward position if the clients don't have a license, and they can't get a license in America. There's no place to get one.
Okay. Okay, next topic. Zika. Can the potential of a mosquito bite disrupt a charter on any basis of force majeure? Terry?
Not if you use the wording I have from our attorney.
Okay, so...
So you're going to have to beg me for it. Or charter my boats.
She has a very well-sourced attorney that we all know who gave her some good wording to add to your contracts about Zika virus, so that it can't be used as a potential for any kind of crazy force majeure and all that sort of thing. Discounts.
Question.
Yes, hang on.
Do you have to write it? I need this too. Do you have to have it written, or is it a given that you can just spout that sentence?
Well, Danielle and the other attorney back there can answer it.
My thought was
You get
that
the idea.
can't-
Somebody says, I'm not going to take that charter in the Caribbean. You know, my daughter could get pregnant, and she could get bit by a mosquito. No,
And
so
maybe
we're not
she
taking
wasn't-
it. We're
maybe she
canceling.
wasn't even going on the trip, but they throw that out at you.
Yeah.
And you can't
it's-
have them cancel on the owner for a mosquito, you know.
Yep.
So that's what Terry's clause is about, is that you can't.
I'm just
say
wondering if
force
it isn't a
majeure.
deterrent to the charter in the first place, having that in writing.
So who
I'm sure
wants,
it
who
is.
wants a boat to go to the Caribbean and have a canceled charter and no
Right.
replacement?
Yeah.
I'll take the client not moving ahead rather than not using the thing because it's such a huge subject.
Yeah, I'm afraid I have to stop all this now because the red
We're
flag is being
out.
waved at me. We have so many more good subjects that I would like to discuss with you. I suggest catching these folks.
I have a question. Before you end it, this is God. This is a.
You're going to have to answer to Bert, okay?
It's all right. Put it on my card.
5 seconds.
This is a more of a macro question. I'm not a charter broker, I'm a sales broker, but I'm curious to know what trends you're seeing in the charter market
That's funny.
since the end of the financial crisis, if things have improved. You know, is there a sweet spot for a particular size of boat that you see being active? Any trends you can comment on?
We're 30 seconds
any of you?
over, and Jeff, this is exactly what I was going to ask him if we were running out of questions, kind of like an overview, a quick one-liner about the state of the industry. And I think that everybody will agree that 5- and 6- stateroom yacht, if you can get it out there for 140, 150 feet, seems to be a nice spot right now in the market, anywhere between 150 and 160, but I don't do that work right now, so I'll leave it to them. But one quick overview, we're 1 minute beyond where we should be. Did you catch this question? Where's the sweet spot?
The sweet spot right now is the Med for next summer.
Okay. Terry?
I would have to agree.
Okay. Nicole?
Mine is for Bahamas and Caribbean.
Okay, I predict that there's going
Depends
to be a
on
lot
who
of
you are.
movement when Cuba hits its stride. You're going to see a lot of action between the Bahamas, South Florida, and Cuba. Okay? So talk to your clients about that stuff. And also talk to your clients about buying a boat and putting it into charter with Bob Saxon. Thanks, everybody.
I got to hand it to Bob. I'm going to give a second round of applause. Thank you, Bob, because of the timing. Thank you, Ann, Nicole, and Terry. And audience, you guys have been great, and we really appreciate it. Everyone's